Good evening, it's 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October 8th. I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District Board of Education. Ms. Stoiko, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Coco? Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer? Here. Ms. White? Here.
Ms. Coco is under the weather, but she's listening in via Zoom. Item B is approve the agenda. It's recommended the Board of Education approves the agenda. The October 8th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion, unless a member of the Board of Education, treasurer, or superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Any changes or anything?
The executive session is removed.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer? Aye. Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Item C is opening ceremony. Number 1 is informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding your topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, they must notify the superintendent and or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, the individual will preface comments by announcement of their name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. All statements should be directed to the board president. No person may address or question members individually. An abridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device and the address shown on the screen. And for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found on the table by the sign-in book. The next policy committee meeting is October 15th, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. in the Board of Education offices, 405 Talmadge Road. And the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education is October 22nd, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. here in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. Now for our pledge of allegiance, and welcome Mrs. Schaefer.
Please stand as you're able and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City School District, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity.
Thank you. Item D is presentations. We have 2 tonight, and for the first, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sadako.
Thank you. My computer is frozen as well. Something is going on, but I think I know what my item is. My first item is to recognize 2 of our board members. Last week? Mr. Harris and I attended with Mrs. Schaefer for recognition. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening. In order to recognize, I know Mr. Gomez was unable to be there that evening, but it was to recognize Mr. Gomez and Mr. Schaefer for the STAR program that is through the Ohio School Board Association, which is in which you are all members, and that's what we go to our annual conference every year, and we join in with other superintendents and school boards. But they have an awards program in which the board members can get different recognition related to the, I guess it's an acronym as well as a word, STAR, Service, Training, Aptitude, and Recognition. And from my understanding, Mr. Gomez has received all 4 of those: service, training, aptitude, and recognition. And Mrs. Schaefer has the T and the A, training and aptitude, working towards the others, right?
That's
So, and is the end goal to be a master board member? Is that the goal then, right? And so have you now mastered that, Mr. Gomez? Well, congratulations to you. And keep at it, Ms. Schaefer. So congratulations to both of you. Going above and beyond.
Can I get that picture since we had wrote all you together?
and beyond what is required is important. So, good work.
And presentation number 2 is our report card overview. Mrs. Houseman and Mrs. Dudowns.
Thank you, Vice President Gomez, board members, Dr. Selico, Mrs. Stoikoy, and also President Coco for listening in and being part of this in the community. We appreciate this opportunity to be with you tonight. First of all, I want to thank Mrs. Dudon. She did the lion's share of the slides tonight, and so I appreciate her help and support. So we will get started. I know it was right there before. Are we signing back in? Well, we'll go ahead and get started. You have your paper in front of you, okay? So the first slide is about report cards. This is a quote that you see every year because we think that it's just a nice reminder that the report card is one indicator of how we perform as a district. And you as a board do an amazing job every time that you're here to tell all the wonderful news about our students and our staff and the many events that you attend. So we appreciate your communication around that. The next slide is about our strategic plan academic goals. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So these are our new strategic plan goals. So we'll be meeting in November. We've started our committee invitations, and so we'll be having people join us and give us feedback and, just be our counsel on that as we move forward over the next few years. So I'll just keep going until you. This next one is the new calculation. This calculation changed because of the college career workforce and military readiness component. So you'll see that achievement and the progress component actually decreased a little bit in its percentage because of that component now is counting, okay? So that just gives you a review of that. And then the next one is the overall view, and you'll notice on the published one there was a watermark. We applied for a watermark because of the college career workforce and military readiness component. The data that was submitted did not accurately reflect the actual data as well as our actual performance. And so I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about more about that and kind of steps moving forward, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. And so overall, it's a 3, which is the same rating as last year. A little bit of change in gap closing went down in graduation, which we'll also talk about that a little bit. And then that college and career workforce factored in this year. Pardon me?
Watermark.
I don't understand what it is.
So it's on the website. It's not showing here. It's like an asterisk. So the watermark is kind of letting the community know that, but it's not, I apologize, it's not reflecting here. It's on the website.
The
Yeah,
word
you're-
is deceiving. We thought it was odd too. Watermark isn't what it
Yeah,
implies.
that's what
It
they
really
call
is an
it.
asterisk.
It's not, okay.
No, it's not what you think, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna do it.
So they're using the word that ODE does.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you, I'm sorry.
okay. And then the next slide is kind of the overview of how you're rated. So it kind of gives you those numerical correspondence to the stars. And then you'll see the overall rating for our schools. What you'll basically see is that some of our schools went up a half a star, some went down a half a star. Richardson improved, DeWitt stayed the same, so those are our 2 highest performing schools. The high school had some pretty nice improvement. Unfortunately, we think they would have had a little bit more so, but that we'll talk a little bit later about that. So I would say it was more of a steady in some ways, but you'll also see there is growth in value added and our performance index, and we'll kind of talk about, we're seeing improvement, not quite equating yet on the rating score, so we'll talk about that a little bit. So that's your overview. The student snapshot, we talked about this last year just to kind of say, you know, our overall enrollment, which stayed fairly steady with last year. The chronic absenteeism went down, which was a positive. And then our graduation rate, I'll talk in detail about that later. That was the 4-year. The 5-year was a 90, I believe, .2. And then you also see kind of the demographic makeup of our students here.
When we get our report card next year, will we get 1 rating for the middle school?
Yes.
Okay.
We will this year. Yes, for next year. Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they are both under BOLIX IRN now.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it will, yes, it will be one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the next part, which we also looked at last year, is how many students are enrolled in the district, and then open enrollment outside the district, and community school enrollment, site-based community school, and then dropout prevention. These numbers are fairly comparable to last year. On the next slide, you'll see, though, this Ed Choice Expansion Program is 609. Last year was 537. So we did go up about 70 students from last year and it was a pretty big expansion this past year into Ed Choice. And of course, that will continue to expand at this point from what I understand. The rest have been fairly steady. And then if we go on to our spending data, so Ms. Stoikoi, just for you, we're about the same as last year, which again, this is very positive because what we're saying is we use our money very wisely. We use it, focuses on instruction. We do better than the state average and you know how we're supporting that. And then I think our teachers also tells a great story. So shout out to Ms. Bogdan and our principals because we have almost all our teachers have a bachelor's degree. Over 50% have a master's degree. We have a more veteran staff, which is also beneficial in many ways, though we love the new ideas of our young teachers coming in. And so we're doing a really good job when it comes to that highly qualified link between our teachers and the courses that they teach. Is that you? Okay.
So one of the factors that we've been following over the past years since it was instituted is the chronic absenteeism. And our chronic absenteeism was 24.3 this year. This is down 6% over the last 2 years. So if you go to the next slide, you will see that we are going in the right direction. So your investment in our attendance liaison, all the work of Mrs. Merkel's team and our special education team as we're trying to make sure everybody's there, and the principals and the secretary, like everybody who's making phone calls and sending email messages and parent squares, hey, I miss seeing you today, is making a difference. So we were really excited to see that we're down. And the blue line, in case you can't tell, the top line is the blue line, so that's ours. And then we are just slightly above the state. We were for 23-24, and for some reason they didn't show the state one for 24-25, I'm not sure, but we feel like we're in a good place. The next slide is showing some of the things that we're doing. So you have seen probably, well, I know you have because you get the parent squares like I do, all of the stay in the game things, and we have Miss Miller, who has been really active. She goes to every school and spends part of her time in each school. Last year we gave 41 tickets to Browns games for students and families, and what they did is they chose students from those who missed less than 10% of school. Last year they were pulling the House Bill 410 reports monthly and sharing those out. There have been some changes with how that's being done, and House Bill 410 is kind of moving away with similar legislation. So we're still following, we're still doing reports, we're actually doing them more often. We had Ms. Miller, Mrs. Maisie from the high school, and Ms. Tucker from the Bullock campus of the middle school. They went to some attendance, professional learning communities at the ESC of Northeast Ohio to learn what other districts throughout Cuyahoga and Summit County were doing, so they could maybe bring some of the strategies back here. And then Ms. Miller held student and staff meetings at the middle school and high school especially, to help check on attendance and try to identify necessary supports, and that's where our counselors and our school social workers, and again, pulling in the principals and teachers as necessary. She also met monthly with Mrs. Maisie specifically about the high school because that's our area of biggest concern with attendance right now. Specifically, they focused on freshman concerns because if we can get students here and involved as freshmen, we know that they can learn and it will continue a good trajectory. She also met with students at the middle school and the high school, and then just, again, giving staff support, going to attendance meetings, things like that, where she had those tough conversations. It's frustrating as a classroom teacher when, you know, little Julie isn't coming all the time, but when you hear why she's not coming and talk about ways you can support that, then that helps everyone feel in the know instead of, oh, I didn't realize that was happening, or that sort of thing.
I have two things on
Sure.
that. One, I think the fact that we're celebrating multi-percentage decreases shows that our strategic plan goal of 1% a year is not strong enough. Because if we're saying it dropped 3% and then 1% and now 2.5%, saying that we only want to decrease by 1% a year, it's not first time saying it's not a strong enough goal. And also, my question is, do we have any positive incentives for students that improve their attendance? So perhaps like a student was chronically absent last year and then they're not this year. Are we doing any incentive programs for those students that we're seeing improvement on their attendance to try to incentivize improved attendance?
Mr. Elder, are you able to answer that?
So one of the things that we did last year is we installed our data days for SEL. And so looking at that PBIS plus, the plus is including all the things that encompasses what a student needs to be able to come to school. So those teams in each building, those care teams are looking at those students and they are working with them specifically on making those improvements. I know for sure the middle schools, what they did, they kind of had like competitions, monthly competitions. The elementary schools were, you know, celebrating, you know, in different ways as well. I think where we probably need to work on, you know, providing more incentives for improvement is probably at, you know, the higher secondary area. But for the most part, every school has something that they're doing to recognize when students are progressing.
Yeah, I know that like at a lot of the elementary schools, they do like class-wide competitions and stuff like that, but that's not necessarily incentivizing like the specific students that are having the attendance issues. So
Yeah,
maybe we could try to do something focused on like, last year you were habitually or chronically, and then this year your attendance significantly improved, and something specifically to help that student realize and recognize.
So that's one of the, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I was going to say that, so two things in my observations just recently being in the schools. One, I did hear some awards being, like a raffle that was being given out at an elementary school. But at the secondary level, I wouldn't sell us short on the impact of paying attention to a particular student. And what I mean by that is Mrs. Miller, for example, our social worker, is working so intensely with certain students that she'll come to me and say, so-and-so hasn't been in school for 3 weeks and I got him here, I went to his house, he's here. Like, and just that personal touch, I think, is a reward, you know, in and of itself, that individual attention. I understand the point of like what we can do above and beyond that, but we are doing those personal connections which are making the difference to get students here by just going to their homes, reaching out to them, staying in contact. Because there are many success stories that Miss Miller she's across the way on the hallway, will come in and want to tell me like, this child came, we haven't seen him, we haven't seen in like years, and we got him back to school, and so those kinds of things, I think that personal touch really means a lot.
And I will say, that was essentially what I was gonna say as well, like the champion, identifying who's going to take the lead and be the champion for those individuals, and sometimes that connection that they're having with the staff member or the person at the school, you know, they can provide that, you know, incentive
based, love, if you will.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. That's one of the things we measure in the panorama is, do they have one trusted adult? So I'm with you on that.
We do have a local business, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say their name or not, but we do have a local business that's offering some incentives. They went out to all of the buildings, and it's, think of the old Pizza Hut rewards. So there's one specifically for reading. If a student fills out 3 books, then they can get that. And I'm not sure if the principals have handed those out yet, but there's also one that the students can get free parts of a meal just for whatever the principal decides is appropriate. So it could be, hey, Julie, I saw you all 5 days last week. That's awesome. Here you go. It's not tied. It could be tied to grades or improvement, but it can also be tied to attendance. So I have not checked with the principals, but I can check in on that and see if they're using those.
And Ms. Miller's also, solicited some of those donations as well of like, meal tickets and things like that she's presented to the schools, and they've used those for individuals who are improving.
The Cleveland Browns stay.
Yeah, the stay in the game is a big.
They get tickets to games.
And we have a closet, when I say a closet full of merchandise for the stay in the game, we have it pretty well organized by size and they send boxes of things, for us being in that partnership. So we are using that quite a bit.
Good. Okay. So this next slide is just talking about the things that we're doing. As Mr. Gomez just mentioned, we are continuing to administer the panorama. The window is actually coming up here, not next week because it's the end of the quarter, and we know everyone's stressed. So at the week after that, again, we have our social workers who are just working as hard as they can, like everyone else, but that is their job, is helping support. And then this year, you may have seen, if you've been in the high school, where they piloted last year, and we're trying to use full scale this year, the scanners where students scan in and out. And there are some issues that we're finding that we're working. We just met about them last week, like how can we overcome this? The nice thing is the scanners integrate with Dazzle. We did find a glitch where if a student was marked absent in the first period class and then they scan in late, the secretary has to actually go in and overwrite that. So we're still working on how we can fix that, and then we also have, again, the Rethink Ed curriculum, which is something that the board has approved for us as an investment over the last few years, where we're using those in classrooms with counselors, sometimes with teachers, providing those SEL lessons that Mr. Elder was just mentioning, because we know students who feel safe are more likely to come to school. So,
Does the fact that we have almost 64% economic disadvantaged students in our district, which that's a lot, does that play a part of the absenteeism?
it can. I mean, I know just myself, even when I was still in the classroom, my husband and I just had this conversation this weekend. If you have a parent who's working 3 jobs or 2 jobs, or they're working the night shift, they don't, sometimes, mistakes happen. And so if a child oversleeps and mom or dad just got home after working a 12 or 14-hour shift, so you will see, similar to report card scores and achievement, but you will see a correlation between absenteeism and districts that have a higher poverty rate.
Before you move off the topic of chronic absenteeism, I want to just add one note here. There were a couple articles that came out this week and today, particularly on chronic absenteeism. Cleveland.com was one of them, and they showed that the state average is 1 in 4, so about 25% is the state average of chronic absenteeism, which is missing 10% or more of the school year. And interestingly, charter schools were 1 in 3, so 34%, 34% of charter schools are having chronic absenteeism. So I'd like to point that out, that is about 8%, 9% more than the state average of public schools.
And we're also closing in on the state average and ready to beat it if we stay on our trajectory.
Yeah,
So,
we're
yeah.
at the game.
And I think also when you said about economically disadvantaged, Ms. White, like when you do trainings on poverty, like the Bridges training, which I like to talk about a lot because I think it's really enlightening. They talk about people in poverty, which I know multiple of us on the board have experienced at a time in our life. You focus on immediate needs.
You do.
So if your tire gets flat, that keeps you from getting your kid to school, and that's also going to keep you from getting to work, and then maybe you're going to get fired from your job, so that becomes your only thing. getting your kid to school is not a priority then. And then also, oftentimes education is seen as aspirational as opposed to a necessity. And that's not a judgment on anyone. It's just because you're focused on immediate needs. You're focused on how am I going to get to work today? How am I going to put
Feed,
food on the table tonight?
Clothes.
And all
Shelter.
those different things. So, education can be just aspirational as opposed to necessity.
And along those same lines, we often have had older siblings who need to stay home, maybe
Yeah,
the daycare provider isn't there, or they have to close for electricity, you know, any of those things. And they have to, you know, you have to go to work, or you don't get a paycheck, so, those all impact.
It's just amazing to me that it's that high, 64%. Wow.
It was 14% when I started in the district.
Yeah,
It's often
Wow.
higher than what is
It's
reported
just
as
so
well,
high.
because some people just don't report it.
That's like almost 2/3.
Mhm.
That's a lot. Okay.
So let's focus a little bit on achievement. We had 3 stars. So when you look at our performance index trend, you'll see that we are, on the next slide, we are trending up. You'll see it's kind of slow and steady. It's not a big disruptive change, but we are seeing those improvements. And so Dr. Selico and I have talked about this. Boy, we'd love to see like a 5% or a 10% jump, but we also know that things that are sometimes a little bit more of a steadier increase sustain in the culture, right? And that means it will kind of root a little bit better. But we're pretty hopeful about some of the things we're doing, and I'll share that with you here coming up. And then the next couple sections are the performance index by student group. And you'll see that quite a few of our subgroups met their goal when it comes to their performance index, except a few did not. So those are there for your review. So that's ELA achievement. Math, we have, that's a little higher hill to climb for us, math achievement. And then when you look at the last year to this year comparison, it's like a tale of two cities. We saw a little decline at the elementary level, but if you recall, when we talked about Wit and Wisdom last fall, we said they had Foundations, Fontes and Pinnell, Hegarty, and then an entire switch to Wit and Wisdom within 3 to 4 years. That is an insurmountable amount of curriculum. I have never seen that in my career. Now, no one's fault. That was just the way we were in this transition with the state. And so Wit and Wisdom is a very robust program. What I am pleased is we didn't lose too much in ELA. We kind of stayed steady. But I'm hopeful this year when we look at our pacing, we are already pacing much better than we were last year. And pacing is what is impacted when you have a new adoption. Teachers are learning the curriculum, they're learning how to go through the lessons, they're learning how to identify what's a priority, what can they leave off, they're learning how to use it for differentiation. And so we are seeing much more confidence with our teachers. I saw a kindergarten Wit and Wisdom lesson today, and I saw some products that the children were doing, and they were already citing text evidence in a kindergarten classroom in Wit and Wisdom. So it was pretty cool.
That is good.
Yeah.
So,
And then I'll, the next part, and then I'll wrap, and then is you'll see middle school, we did have some improvements there. But again, you know, you're looking at 3% or 6%, which is good. We'll take that, right? But our most growth was at the high school level. And so, you know, Mr. Smith and I, we really spent time in the TBTs last year. I met with I met with biology and geometry and algebra and American government last year, and Mr. Smith was there too. And we really did some wonderful professional development and focus for the high school. And because they felt this short-term win, we really feel a synergy in the high school. I was sharing Dr. Selico at a walkthrough today, it was just a wonderful feeling. I can see the growth in our pedagogy, in our classrooms. It was pretty exciting to be there today. And I talked with students. They all knew what they were doing. Student engagement has improved 110%, which is a big part of what we're also focusing on. So I'm very hopeful that the high school will continue to grow. Of course, they have a pretty big disruption. They have a move in the middle of the year. So that makes me nervous, but we're still just trying to stay focused on academics and support people as much as we can with the move. It's exciting, but there's always trepidation in those types of situations. Mr. Gomez, did you have a question or a thought?
Yeah, so looking at the data, it seems like 5th grade math is where our math scores
Oh, yeah.
start to dip, and then they never really recover.
Right.
So,
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
There's a reason. It's just a reason. 5th grade math is like the end of the benchmark where the state of Ohio says, we want you to secure these fundamental skills, and then we're going to close that door. And so the 5th grade math test can sometimes seem quite rigorous, and it is. And then when you go into middle school and high school, there is no more assessment on fundamentals in math or spiraling back. It's just we're going full throttle into course content. And so I read the book that Dr. Heron is recommending, and I had shared information with the teachers about it. And in TBTs, I'm talking about some of the refinements that we're learning in that. So I think, the teachers, we had a full day with them, secondary in August or September. We have another one coming up next week, and then November. So we are definitely putting a lot of resources into mathematics this year because we really need that to grow at a faster rate.
In addition, with our 4th and 5th grade teachers, we started pulling them into the
Mhm.
PD.
Thank you. Yep.
And so we had a virtual meeting last week, and then we asked Dr. Heron to meet with those 4th and 5th grade math teachers. She's got 2 half days coming up where she can focus, and what she's sharing are just very tiny, which is what we've been trying to stress, just tiny tweaks that you can make that will have a high impact. You can't ask somebody to overhaul everything they're doing, but if you give them a few tiny things, and the teachers really seem to be very receptive to what she's sharing and ready to try, like, okay, I can try that tomorrow sort of thing. So that's positive. So we're hoping to start fixing that earlier so that it can just keep building the positive momentum.
And then what do we do for our kids that are in middle school and high school now that perhaps lost out on getting those
Love that.
fundamentals?
Yep.
And are in these cohorts that are struggling? How
So-
do we
yep.
help them reach back down and gain knowledge that they never did gain?
So we started the algebra support class, which was one of the classes I was in today. I didn't know it was a support class. So right there tells me it's going well. Then I talked to the kids in the class, and one of the kids was sharing with their teacher that they're becoming a leader in their Algebra 1 class because they're learning more knowledge in their algebra support class, which they're transferring into their Algebra 1. So, and I sat with a student today, and he talked to me about what he was doing and why something wasn't working, and it's the most articulate I've seen our high school students mathematically. So I thought that was great. And then I walked into an Algebra 1 class, and the way the classroom was structured had changed. So the way children are focusing in the learning environment had changed a little bit, which also can be an impact. So that made me really hopeful today. Also, I've been meeting with 5th grade TBTs at the elementary level, and so we're focusing on that. One of the things we're learning in math is that children are mimicking, so they're being compliant. They're looking at the teacher complete a problem, then they mimic how to respond to the answer, but what happens is they're not transferring that knowledge when they have a new experience. And so teachers have to kind of look beyond the mimicking in mathematics and think about how can they dive deeper into knowledge. And so that is one of the things I think Dr. Heron does a pretty amazing job at helping them see between those two. If they can get that part of mathematics, that's gonna be a pretty big thing. We're also saying every standard should be at the application level or higher, even if it's not, we need it to be, because that's gonna give them, again, more knowledge in mathematics that they're doing. So, you know, we're really diving into math, even though we are doing things in ELA too. We'll tell you more about that. We haven't forgotten about that, but, yeah. So we're hoping those things, and then Zern Math is also at the middle school academy time, as well as for some of our high school students. So that's the free online program. Julie Dudone's worked on the grant, and so it's free, and it's seen as a high-quality program through the state of Ohio. And so we're layering that in for 6th through 8th grade students at their academy time every day.
And that's actually tied in, Zern has a crosswalk between Big Ideas Math, which we've had since 2020, and the Zern. So teachers know exactly which Zern lessons support what they're teaching in the Big Ideas. And we also had a Big Ideas representative come, that was early September, and meet with, so we have Big Ideas, if you recall, starting in grade 6 all the way through Algebra 2. So we had a representative come and kind of refresh, and we've had some new teachers, of course, so like, here's how you use the product, here's how you find this, here's how you find that. Because you get so overwhelmed with all of the things in a curriculum that sometimes it's easy to forget about a resource that's right in front of you.
I just think, I visiting one of our elementary schools last year, they had like in the hallway, to like represent as the kids learned their times tables in 3rd grade. They would like move their name under which number they learned. It's like 1 to 12. When I visited at the end of the year, some of the kids still weren't at 12, but now they moved on to 4th grade. So they didn't learn that knowledge, but now they're in 4th grade. And they were supposed to learn that in 3rd grade, and now they're learning, you know, geometric functions in 4th grade.
Yeah, so we reintroduced Rocket Math. One of the things we were reading and studying, that if they don't have fluency, it's drawing too much of their working memory, and then they're not able to perform at the application level mathematically. So we're introducing Rocket Math again, K-8, as a way to build more fact fluency, so it becomes more automaticity, which is important in math. And each of those Rocket Math performance levels is at the student's level. It's differentiated, so we're taking them from where they are and moving them up, as well as at the elementary level. We did a new version of Success Maker. They had 2 assessments. We chose the least painful one, we thought. It was the most painful one, actually. So then the teachers gave us the feedback, and they said, well, let's try the most painful one, and we did, and it is the least painful one, actually. So the data that they're getting from the Success Maker assessments, K-5, is actually, they're buying more into that this year as teachers. So we are acknowledging that, yes, there are gaps, absolutely. Yep.
And do we have a screener for math? Like, cause like we have a cadence for
Yep.
reading. Do we
There
have a
is.
screener?
Well,
Cause when I was
Yes.
reviewing it, that was one of my
Yeah,
questions.
so
I was gonna
start-
save it for progress. It's probably more
So
appropriate.
starting next year, as you know, because you
Yeah.
keep up on legislation, we will have the math improvement plans, which are the MIPS. Take a look, Ms. White, at students who are economically disadvantaged and underrepresented minorities. So the next few tables are much more easy to read, and you'll see the gold is, that's where we fell in each of those categories. And then in parentheses there, I put where our actual percentage was, so that you could see that. But it's a pretty convoluted process. And then I've been working with Mrs. Hausman and Mrs. Falco about how can we look at these and see kind of the bang for our buck, sort of, so to speak, in terms of making an impact. And like I said, each of the next several categories go through that, or excuse me, next slides go through each of those categories. But we are making growth. We really are, even though it's not always reflected exactly.
Some of it's all or nothing. You either get 5 points or
Gifted
you don't.
action steps.
So there's not a in between sometimes that
Action.
being gifted. The gifted component is the most convoluted one.
Go
that
6
we
more.
find. So,
Oh, went too far.
Back 3.
sorry, I lied.
Stack.
Oh, because you're seeing the skipped ones. Okay. So, yeah, so there's 3 components that show up on the report card. All of those slides are just one of the components, and you earn points for each of those. Then there are other slides that Mrs. Hasma was saying, you either get a 0 or a 5. So you're either meeting it or you're not, and there's no in between. Some of the things that we're doing, continuing to support teachers of gifted, again, K through 12. The state does not, although a student might have a superior cognitive ID at the preschool level, that's not something we identify or serve. Providing gifted PD, focusing on the social emotional needs of gifted learners, looking at, again, cluster grouping strategies, depth of knowledge, so similar to what we're doing in math, we're doing specific to our gifted learners. Mrs. Belko has been adding, we have a Google Drive called All Things Gifted, where she's got a teacher hub, and so she just keeps throwing things in there. She'll let teachers know, hey, if you're looking for this, and then she also meets with teachers. Continuing to maintain and improve family communication with an All Things Gifted newsletter, gifted information nights. We had our gifted advisory committee that started last year, and we'll be continuing with Mrs. Belko. She's providing contest information for students. She's got an actual Google Classroom just for them, so if they're interested in a writing contest or an art contest, things like that. Refining our written education plan goals, and she has been out meeting with every teacher that has to be gets to be part of the WEP process, and those teachers are helping decide appropriate goals for those students. And the gifted rule did change. It officially went into effect this summer. It changed the year before, but didn't go into effect until this summer. And so she's been also using that time to educate teachers on what the law requires. Again, we're talking about how can we add cluster grouping to the high school model. Cluster grouping is an intentional grouping of students. The new law says there have to be at least 3 students with similar gifted IDs in the same classroom. It gets more complicated at the high school level. So Mrs. Balco is working with Ms. Shaw to see, are there a couple schedule changes we can make here and there, and then we can serve even more students. And as a result of that, she's meeting with even more teachers. Last year it was just AP and honors teachers. Now she's meeting with even more, so people are learning those strategies. And then this year we're going to use same goal. She's been working ever since she got back from her summer break. I'll call it a break, even though we bugged her all summer. As a hub for written education plans and then written acceleration plans. And I think it's a reminder to you that our students who are taking Algebra 1 as 8th graders are on those written acceleration plans, and we do that as a way to provide a transition period. So if a student isn't successful, we're able to move them back into on-level math without repercussion to their high school report card, which is really important since that's typically their first high school grade. On the next slide, you'll see some of the key programs that we're doing. The Dobama Theater, they come into the middle school and do performances. There's anything highlighted in green on that slide is new for this 25-26 school year. Oh, I don't, yes.
It has an asterisk.
Okay, thank you.
Near the asterisk.
So adding a poetry contest for the Stop the Hate, Power of the Pen writing contest, she's expanding that for this year. The 24 math tournament, which we held here this year, the students are going to join Copley Schools sponsor, sorry, I can't get my words out, sponsor a local community competition, young authors, 6th District Educational Compact Reading and Writing Festival. Mr. Gomez, I wouldn't be surprised if you went to that back in the day. That is something we haven't been to for a while, since I was a young teacher here, but students go to Kent State for the day. To qualify, they have to read a certain number of books, 2 of which have to be by the visiting author. And then they do reading and writing activities. Not your thing.
It was fun.
Yeah, right?
I loved it.
Yeah, they do reading and writing activities, and it's been a long time away, and so we're rejoining that. And then adding a spelling bee at the elementary and the middle school level. So excited about that.
I'm so happy Power of the Pen and the Reading Writing
Yeah.
Festival is back.
I
really
thought
am.
the author's books were boring, and I didn't.
Oh, yeah, and you can only go as a 7th 7th or 8th graders, so
Yeah.
if you don't like the author that year, it's been interesting. We had an author come in jeans and a sweatshirt one year, and she was howling at the students because she wrote a werewolf book. And Miss Diakina was not pleased. But usually, the author is very engaging. The students loved her. We've had some really great authors.
We have.
The next is the graduation component rating. So, as a reminder, we have our 4-year graduation rate and our 5-year graduation rate. And the 4-year graduation rate is 60% and the 5-year is 40%.
It's worth 60%, 40%, just for clarification.
Oh, thank you.
How it's weighted, yeah. I don't want you to think we have 60,
That is not the
40%
range.
passages.
Sorry, no. Thank you. And then we were at 3 stars, and we're excited about where we will be this year. And if you go to the next slide, it shows our exact percentages. So we were at the 88.9% for our 4-year graduation rate for the cohort of 2025, and 94% for our 5-year graduation rate, which is really exciting. And even more exciting will be when you see next year's report card.
So what we learned from this experience was that some of our students during COVID kind of like stayed on the books. There was this hopeful, would they return to school? How can we help them graduate? And so that didn't quite occur. We also learned that there has to be a clear tracking mechanism for all students in the cohort. So for example, we found a student several states away who did graduate. That is not always an ODEX. Like we would expect Ohio is going to have all that information. There's another place that we can look for graduates. That child was not there, so Rebecca Miller actually called and tracked down this child and his family, and so we did find out he graduated. So what we learned is that we needed a whole new process of how to track the cohort. Because once they're part of the cohort in 9th grade, once they withdraw and they move, they're going to stay there, and so we have to kind of know where they are, even if they leave here. So, anyways,
We've been working hard.
yeah, we've been working hard. You'll see next year's report cards we have to submit all the data by Friday, so we already know it for next year. So it's much better.
And it is actually the highest since I've been in my position, so.
Wow.
Very excited to see those numbers. The next slide is just a line graph so you can see where we are. And then the following slide is talking about our graduation action steps. So some of the things that we're doing, so we have our MTSS, we have our early warning system. The state has one through ODEX. We don't like it, but we do like the one from Mindy Geschke, and you have approved contracts for her before, so we're grateful for that. We have added care team meetings, which include administrators, counselors, social workers. They look at the data and they provide supports in a more timely manner instead of waiting until it gets to another place, because we're purposefully setting these meetings. Again, we're trying to meet the students' needs when they're freshmen. That's for attendance, but it's really for all of their needs, trying to help them get involved. We have a high school data integrity team, so Mrs. Hausman, Ms. Coolidge, Mr. Smith, Ms. Shaw, myself, and then anybody else we need to wrangle in every once in a while, maybe our EMIS person or someone like that. We are monitoring that college, career, workforce, and military readiness that Ms. Hausman is going to talk about soon. And we have our cohort tracking sheets where we keep track of how many credits, where students stand in terms of their testing. We have the Power BI site from Ms. Geschke. And then we have monthly EMIS team meetings, on all sorts of the things, tracking data and that sort of thing.
So our score that we expect to see, it's in the secure data center, is 95.6. So, yeah, so we're excited about that. So this is what is new on the report card. Now, there was a year or two that we had an awareness that this component was coming. What became challenging in this one is, and why we did the watermark, was our students were receiving College Credit Plus, and we had 4 maybe children join the military. We didn't have a good tracking progress of those students, so not all the data that we knew got into our EMIS systems. So that's why we had the 1-star rating. We have gone through some recent training with School Links, as you recall. That's part of the strategic plan. And so the counselors and Mr. Smith and the administrative team and Chris Shaw are looking at using School Links as well as the cohort spreadsheet to kind of merge those things together because they're pretty excited about how it can provide more information. This will also be a standing agenda on their monthly meetings, as well as something that we work with Mr. Smith on. So basically, the data was there, but we didn't always have a way of going and retrieving the data. Like College Credit Plus, a child gets a transcript from the college, we don't receive that. That data wasn't always coming back to us, that we were putting it somewhere and some other things. So it was a compilation of not having just systems, and so we have those systems now. That also, the score for this year's report card was 50.6. On the next slide, you go one more.
What do we think the score should have been?
Well, the score that we have for next year is right now, which again closes Friday, is 71%, which is 3 stars. So we think we would have been closer to 3 stars. Yeah.
And we are unfortunately not the only district in a similar position. We met with someone from DEW, I don't know how many times, we're on a first name basis at this point.
Yep.
But, yeah, so we have had those changes in place and
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I've had people ask me specifically about this category. So just to make sure I'm understanding this right. So this is kind of like a new category.
Yeah.
And we knew it was coming.
We did.
And so we were preparing for it. But we weren't 100% sure how we were going to get the data to,
I think
or
the
process to get.
part of it was process and procedures between all these different stakeholders within the organization. But we also, Chris Shaw is now submitting our EMIS data 100% running through her. Though we appreciate NeoNet support, they don't live and work daily here. And so not sure that we always had communication as strong as we needed it to be. But now that we have everything running through Chris Shaw, and we really appreciate the tech department taking on integrations, that is really helping us to streamline. Ms. Shaw said today that she was grateful that we are working ahead of deadlines now, where before we felt like the deadlines were hitting us.
She's awesome.
Yeah, so she's feeling like she is just smiling, and we're so proud of all the things that we've learned. But you know, you never learn things the easy way, do you?
No.
We learned it the hard way. And
Other districts have some similar experiences.
absolutely.
It's processes.
High-performing
like that.
districts had like 3 stars, but would have had 5 stars, right? So, you know, high-wealth districts,
So
not,
there's trouble reporting.
yeah, everyone was learning this new reporting.
And also, of the 11 measures, a student can only count for the district
For one.
one time. So if a student had a remediation-free ACT score,
That's
it doesn't matter if they also got the honors diploma and industry, any of these other things.
Wow.
It matters to us because we want the best for our students. But in terms of the reporting mechanism, it doesn't
Who thought that
matter.
one up?
They only count one time, and they're unable to.
Don't get me started, Miss
Yeah,
White.
they're unable to explain to us, like,
Dumb question.
none of these are weighted, so we don't know.
How do you know which category a student would fall into if they have multiple categories?
Well, that's what I, that
Yeah,
we
that's-
don't know yet, and they have not been able to, but once they count, I don't know if they just pull their SSID
So
out
what we
of
do
their
is
notes
we
or
look
what.
at every
Yeah.
single student in the cohort, and we try to see where do they fit in this college and career readiness. So it's literally putting multiple puzzles together.
And
That's
we report them
ridiculous.
everywhere they qualify, because we wanna know for
Yeah,
ourselves.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
Right.
It's just dumb. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Do you think that this process will change between now and then?
We love your candor, Ms. White.
I'm
Or
sorry,
are
but
there
it's,
districts
you know,
problems with this process change between now and?
who thinks of these things?
I don't know. I will say Mr. Smith was a superstar at the high school principals meeting because he's been so involved in our EMIS meetings that, that he was someone that they were calling upon for expertise. And then NeoNet also said that I was the only curriculum director that was using the secure data center, and I'm teaching our principals how to use it as well. So, you know, out of these struggles that we're having in others, I think we're learning some pretty new skills. Would we prefer not to learn some of these new skills? Would we like to have more time in classrooms? Yes, we would.
Wow.
Mhm.
The process statewide won't change because the report card is codified in state law.
Yeah.
So it'd require a change in state law,
Yeah.
and it's not on their radar, and their goal is to meet as little as possible and to be done by Thanksgiving. That's what they've said.
That's nice.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's go into early literacy. So we've been steady Eddie here. So the reading score is based on the reading portion of the ELA test. It does not include writing. So our actual scores are a little bit higher, but writing is not included in this subcomponent score. Promotion of fourth grade, you know, we've been pretty steady there. The improving K-3 literacy is only the children who are on a RIMP, are they moving off the RIMP? This score has bothered me since I arrived, and so I thought, okay, so this year, there's a window of time that you benchmark your students, and we've always benchmarked very early because we wanted to have information for parents at conference night. But as a former second grade teacher, I know it takes a while for children to get in the groove and learn how to be a student again after the summer slide. But we were testing them 1 or 2 weeks after school starts. But we have a 1-month window of time. So we said, let's test them a little bit later, and let's see, do we get a better performance of our students? Because they've been in the flow, they have their routines and procedures, they've been reading for a while, they're getting back into being a school student. Well, we reduced our RIMPs this year by 40%, just by changing the time. Now we're hoping we're improving reading with Foundations, Wit and Wisdom, Heggerty, and also maybe the testing window. We'll know another year if this is related to both or one or the other. But we did decide to make that modification, and we did see, now that does not show here, but it will show in the future. And then, again, we appreciate the support of the structured literacy specialists. I've been seeing them with their Orton-Gillingham training. We actually had a teacher talk about it in a staff meeting today. She gave an example of a child reading who did not need prompted. She said, I've never not prompted a child who was struggling with reading, and this was one of my first experiences seeing children read with their new learning without a prompt. So the teachers are very excited with what's going there, and so we're very hopeful that we're going to continue to grow here. Dr. Wilfong is still with us virtually, so she's working mostly with middle school and high school, but she made us elementary videos, and they're getting their video training every month. Because we knew we didn't have enough of Dr. Wilfong to stretch her, so we decided we would focus secondary.
So does the writing seem to help their reading?
Yes.
Is there any data?
All our writing data did improve, and this year, the state of Ohio actually, you can download the full sample of the child's writing. This is the first year. They can actually see what the children wrote on the test. We've never been able to see that before. So we're teaching the teachers how to download that.
But it has made a difference.
It has.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I think back to your point about economically disadvantaged, that makes a huge impact on reading because more and more words will be unfamiliar to you when you've grown up in a world that's smaller. And when money is tight, your world just is naturally smaller because you have less opportunities to experience as much. And so I think back to one of our principals shared with me, they were working on like a block puzzle with a student, and it was a red barn, and the kid didn't know what a barn was. And you would think that that's something we would just all know, but this kid had never been to like a corn maze or a barn, you know, like, and they're not that far away from us, but when you're in that world of being so economically disadvantaged that your world can become smaller because of that. And then so your exposure to words then becomes smaller.
That's what's exciting about Wit and Wisdom because the vocabulary development is so rich.
They have a lot of background.
Lot of background, a lot of
Okay.
building knowledge. I saw a video of a teacher teaching the circulatory system book, and she went and had an echocardiogram recently, and she brought the video of her own heart, and she showed the children what her heart looks like in the circulatory system. Just imagine those types of words would not have been exposed to in other curricula.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
so.
it's, I mean, even at the high school level, I taught about apartheid. Well, what's apartheid? I'm going, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Background, we gotta do background now.
right.
Because I just assumed they knew from world history or whatever, and they didn't.
So
And
we're,
that really,
yeah.
I had to go back and, okay.
So we're hopeful, you know,
Yeah,
but, you know, we've really talked about that our early literacy scores they've kind of been stagnant, you know, they've been 68 to the lower 70s, and so we need to see that start to pop up. So,
I hope so.
so we're hopeful that, you know, our RIMS reduction, maybe that's a good sign. We see our high school ELA is improving, that's a good sign. But, you know, we're not where we want to be, that's for sure. And our teachers feel the same. That's, you know, they're working so hard, but
Yeah.
they want to see that improve too. Okay, the last section is value added.
You added. So this is just a reminder, we're looking at how the district schools teachers have an academic impact on students' growth. And it measures their current achievement compared to prior achievement results. And so for example, like in 5th grade science, okay, thank you. The state.
I edited after she printed. What's going on?
The state,
Sorry.
that's okay. The state makes a prediction based on their ELA and their math, what they should achieve in science, just, you know, through some fancy schmancy mathematical. But I use this analogy each year. Value added, you're in line for the bus. We want everyone to continue moving in the same line, or maybe a buddy lets them skip ahead. We don't want anybody standing at the back talking, because then they're not going to stay in line. And that's all value added is. Our students staying in line about where they should be. The next couple slides, this shows you, so our overall district rating was 2 stars. The reason for that, even though we did so much better in some areas academically, is because they're actually looking at a 3-year average now. They didn't used to do that. So we anticipate on next year's report card that like the lowest year will fall off, and then that this will improve. The next slide is just maybe. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's
And then
okay.
that was next, yeah.
All right.
Do you wanna look at mine?
Sure.
She's gonna get me later. Why did you change this?
Would you mind going to the next slide, Mr. Chase? Thank you. All right, so if you're taking a look at, so there's that 3 years out, you can see it's at negative 5.78, but when that drops off, then 2 years out, we were at negative 2.37.
If you look down in the bottom, some of those scores were actually negative 10, negative 12. So every year drops off, that recalculates, but having those double-digit negatives are still in our 3-year average. But you can see the +1 and in the yellow, so you can see the improvement that we've had the last 2 years.
Yeah, so we're excited to see where that goes for next year, that we will continue to grow. And then the next line is specific to our gifted on that same page. And then as you take a look at this, we have this year's, and then we also have last year's, a smaller, just so you can kind of compare. And, you know, because our achievement wasn't where we wanted it to be in a couple of grade levels, you're still gonna see that dark red. But you will also see, for example, at the high school, the significant evidence of more progress in ELA 2 and American government. So achievement and growth don't always, you know, it's not an exact equation, but as more students are achieving, they are meeting or beating their, you know, hey, can I cut in front of you sort of thing in line, and they're moving ahead of their peers who are also taking the test. And then this next slide is just showing you, it has our overall, and then you can also see students who identified as gifted and students with disabilities to see where they are. The one on the left is the overall, and on a positive trend. The students with disabilities and the students identified as gifted are actually doing better than just those overall groups. So that's a positive thing. That means we're showing growth at both ends of the bell curve.
Now that we are running our own preschool, will we be able to track those students that we taught in preschool somehow? Because I think it'll be interesting going forward, say that we started with a kid when they were 3. To see what that kind of impact is as they come through our system.
They're in progress book already, so
Okay.
we'll be able to track, and we have assessments that they take that's required, and so we'll have all that data.
Because at some point, I know everyone would love to be able to offer preschool to
We did
everyone.
have an outside speaker come and stop and tell Ms. Sotiki that preschool was night and day. She said she has never seen the children so well behaved and so attentive in all the years that she's been at preschool. So we're very excited that that student engagement piece is really improving, so.
But it'd be helpful to kind of be able to tell the story as well.
Absolutely, and our kindergarten transitions will be much more robust than they were before, so that's good too.
We'll also have kids that didn't have preschool, so,
Yeah.
until we're able to,
exactly.
so you don't get the full benefit of teaching everything that you have to in kindergarten, because you have to still have those kids that have, this is the first time learning anything, they have no knowledge of schooling.
This slide here is, again, it's showing where we are, and it's broken down by subject area. So all of those slides are just a slightly different view, so you can see where we're showing the most growth. And then, again, we have up to the 3 years, and then 2 years, and then the current year gains only. So moving in the right direction.
And then these are just, the data points that we use to tell our student data stories. So obviously report card data, that's your overarching big picture. Acadians is our screener. The readiness assessments is more of a formative assessment we're using more at the secondary level. Our gifted screener, of course, the AP data is very important. Our web exams for college and career readiness, curriculum-based measures, and of course attendance. So we are trying to be careful and to use the data that we have wisely and not just layer in. We try to use data screeners as much as we can for multiple reasons. So we're not, though it does always feel like we're over-testing a little bit, but many of these tests are required by the state as well. So. And then gap closing is, we had 3 stars. Again, many of these, so we didn't quite meet our English learner requirement this year. We missed it by a few percentage points. One of the things, so Dr. Wilfong was an EL teacher, so we decided that instead of spending a higher amount to go to the state conference, we're using some of that money for Dr. Wilfong to come in with our EL teachers. We're also doing a push-in model, where before we were pulling students out for English learner support. We want to push in so they have more time with their peers, more time with their core instruction. We also noticed too that the assessment for the OALPA assessment was a one-time sitting, and they would take all 4 parts at one time. We're going to try to break the 4 parts up over a month's period, so they just have small sections. Our writing section is the most challenging for our students, and again, that's where Dr. Wilfong is going to help our teachers focus on that. So we're going to see if some of these refinements will help our children perform better this year. So, and then gifted, we already talked about their points, and then you can see we did really well in our gap closing with ELA, so you can see a lot of green there. Math, again, we were 5 percentage points away from meeting the goal, so we still have some growth there to go. And then our graduation score that we talked about earlier did suppress the graduation gap closing. Next year, we think that you'll see a lot more green next year, so.
And as a reminder, there's a minimum number of students, so where you see that NC there have to be at least 15 students in that student group.
Yep. I think that's a lot. Thank you for being so patient, and thank you for being patient with the date. I so appreciate your flexibility, so thank you. Any other thoughts or questions?
Any further questions from the board?
Just thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Excited for the next.
yeah, we are too. Yeah, we hope it's our breakout year, so, right? So.
Thank you, Bo.
Yeah, thank you.
I would just say in closing that, we've talked a lot about, achievement and being truly, graded on reflection of our grades and our performance. And yet you heard numerous times tonight, Mrs. Hausman saying, we figured this out. We figured out how to submit the data. We had to put processes and procedures in place. And we can play this game with early literacy, how we can adjust when we assess students. None of which are directly related to students achieving in the classroom. They're all clerical, data-related systems that impacted our report card. And that's the frustration I have as I learn and sit with, either it's Mrs. Hausman or Neonet and listening to these conversations, and it frustrates me because it's not fully reflective of what our students are doing. It's a matter of we made maybe an error in reporting or we didn't catch something, which is just unfair in my opinion, and for what it's worth. I appreciate the team's efforts and Mrs. Hausman being relentless in trying to figure out these processes that we need that we've discovered, and they don't just pop up and come to you. You have to do digging, and I just truly appreciate the efforts of Mrs. Hausman and the team that the input that she solicited from them, because it's great work. So thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda. Ms. Stoikoi.
I'd like to recommend the Board of Education approve all items in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
There's not much there, just the minutes from last meeting and then our donations. There are a few on there, that we always appreciate.
Questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer? Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland? Mr. Gomez?
Aye. Alright, brings us to item F, Treasurer CFO's business. Ms. Stoikoi.
I'd like to recommend the Board of Education approve and accept the 5-year forecast as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Stoikoi.
I know.
Bear with me. The last couple days. Not feeling well, so. It's October now, October.
Is it a 5-year forecast still, or is it a 4-year forecast?
It's a 4-year, but we're gonna continue to do a 5-year, but we're only required to submit to the state a 4-year. But
Okay.
as a district, we'll continue the 5-year for planning purposes and everything. What will be submitted and reflected, at DEW is gonna be just the 4 years.
And what they'll rate us on for
Correct.
other angry
Correct.
words is for.
Yes.
Okay.
So today you're gonna get the senior night special, because last night was senior night for my oldest for volleyball, so this is her first, this is 7th grade, and then that's her this year on the red. No, she did not do a flame, I don't know that they're allowed to do that in a gym. And not in our gym anyway.
Well, not in our gym either.
Those,
No.
those drapes are, it's further as we get out of the forecast. Several factors are gonna influence those later years. So there are 2 state budgets that are yet to be determined. In there, there are new, potentially, or renewed tax levies, negotiated, with our 3 unions, enrollment changes, and as I mentioned before here, they have, updated it to now be in October and February, and next year will be August and February instead of November and May, and gone from the 5-year to 4-year. But as a board, for a planning tool and a management tool, we're gonna continue with the 5-year as always, so we can kind of proactively take steps to address any challenges. So we are trending toward a revenue shortfall starting in fiscal 2029, which is the same as May, with expenditures growing faster than revenue. So we would need a revenue increase of 4.76% over that time, to balance by that 5th year in 2030, or $4.2 million reduction in expenditures, which is quite a lot. So that obviously will impact our carryover funds, which, we would use for those future plannings, as you'll see as we go on.
But the last time we passed new money was 2019, so it's incredible that somehow we're stretching that levy to
Yes.
almost a decade.
Yes, it really is. So this is what it looks like, obviously not great. So we are pretty low. We ended that final year being negative 6.9. But if we go to the next slide, you can kind of see the numbers there. So that'll show you where we're at. We're not ending with a whole lot this year. A little bit next year due to a one-time revenue we'll talk about, and then even less in fiscal 28 than this year, and then heading towards the negative in those 2 years. I think if you click it again, it'll show you those are the renewal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So our revenues, not much has changed here in this scenario. If you keep clicking, I think there's a little, keep going, yeah. So taxes and state sources make up 93, almost 2.25-24% of our revenues. There are 3 projected anticipated renewals of 3 levies, however, in the 11th hour, and I didn't change this because it would have messed everything up. But it will be reflected in February. The Senate did override our veto and concurred with the House, and so the emergency levy will no longer be able to be renewed. So it's still in here, however.
I don't know how you're supposed to project that, but have fun with it.
Yeah, that's why I didn't mess with it now at the last minute, as the day I think I sent you guys the forecast is when that came out, and
You can
I
put a
thought,
ticket into Forecast 5 Analytics. How are we supposed to project the
yeah.
non-renewal ability of levies?
Right. So I did not mess with it in a sense, and we will cross that bridge here next time. But that is going to be, have a big impact. So total revenue is expected to increase about 0.82%. It has increased 0.4 on average. I mean, we're talking less than 1% here. We're not talking anything crazy. So looking at the numbers, we have real estate, so 3 levies, which I just talked about. The 1 is up this November, the 9.97 mil, and then the 4 mil that Mr. Gomez just talked about in regards that we passed in 2019 with the building will expire at the end of tax year 2028, collection in 2029, and then obviously the 3.7 expires at the end of tax year 2026, so the last collection for that is 2027. And then you can see that modeled. We'll go over a lot here, just that next year, the tax year 2026 is our sexennial reappraisal, so that's the big one. That's the one that they do every 6 years where they actually physically go out and update trends. As of now, still statewide are still high as they've been. So we'll kind of see where that goes with some of these property tax reform things and all of that stuff.
The House passed the one today that says that they're capping it at 3% growth, which is what issue 2 is on the Summit County ballot, is that the county wants to take their 2.2 mils and make it charter millage and then cap it at 3% growth. So then Dave Thomas liked that idea and he stole it from Summit County. You're welcome. And, now wants to cap sexennial and triennial reappraisals at 3% growth as well on our inside village.
Yep. So there's a lot floating out there that,
And they said, and that passed with bipartisan support today, actually.
yeah, there's a lot on the docket here. So you can see that we have reduction factors to get from our voted to our effective millage and how that is. We're at effective 33.37 class 1 and 45.9 for class 2. We are not at the 20 mil floor, which there is a number of bills in regards to the 20 mil floor as well.
That passed with bipartisan support today too.
Yeah.
So that's gonna become law.
So while that won't affect us, it affects a number of other districts and could potentially affect us in the future. Also, it's gonna depend on how those valuation rates change because that is what effectively brings that millage down. So the current state biennium budget included several proposals, as we just talked about. So the governor actually vetoed 4 property tax measures. And the House attempted to override 3 of those vetoes. So the County Budget Commission Authority, changes to the 20 mil floor calculation, and to include emergency and substitute and other levies, and then the elimination of certain levies like emergency, replacement, substitute, et cetera. So, as I said, last week the Senate voted to override the elimination of the various levy types. So we will no longer be able to renew that levy. However, they still have time to take back up all these other ones or any new ones and do that. So that's not that they're, a done deal that, they didn't get the votes. It can still happen, plus the number of outstanding outside proposals.
So how does any of that help the schools? I think, because didn't we pass a constitutional thing in Ohio where we're supposed to, actually fund the schools?
Mm-hmm.
So how does any of this do that?
It doesn't.
Thank you.
Their hope is that,
I had to ask, I'm
their
sorry.
hope
but I
is
had
that
to
by
ask.
doing enough of that this year, it'll encourage people to not eliminate property taxes next year when
I
it's on the
understand,
ballot.
but they should, but the idea was that they were supposed to fund schools, period, equitably, and they never have since DeRolf. And how long ago was that? Yeah, a long, long time. So, just saying,
When the percentage of state funding is actually decreased.
yes,
Yep.
exactly. Yep, okay.
In addition, there were, as I said, a number of recommendations because part of the governor established a property tax reform group that had a report due to him by September 30th. They had a number of ideas, not all great, and they're just recommendations, though. They're not anything someone has to take these up, and some of them have been taken up in different versions of different bills, but they did. I think I forwarded that to you on what those recommendations are. Dr. Selico did. So this just kind of shows the valuations per year and kind of what our changes have been. Obviously, you see in those years that are in yellow, those are the updates and the reappraisal years. Public utility, this is a small amount, but it generates 1.24%. So it's changed an average dollar amount of $63,684. And so while it says it's projected to change at less, that's because it doesn't assume the renewal up in that line. It assumes it at the bottom because we can't assume passage of that renewal. So that's why it's lower. It's not technically lower, but that's what it looks like. And then state share of local property taxes, which is the final part of real estate. So that's the 10% and the 2.5% rollback. And the homestead exemptions, and that is about almost a little under 6% of our total revenues. And as I've mentioned before, the House Bill 59, which it says that in 2013, the state reimburses all of those. Previous to that and after that, that 12.5% is shifted to the taxpayer, which is why getting some of these levies that we have continuing has been good. The last one that we passed, and potentially this one in November, that would lock in that the state would reimburse those, and it would not ever be shifted then to the taxpayer, whereas if they were to lapse, they would. One thing new with House Bill 96, which is the state budget, is that they introduced the piggyback property tax exemptions, which allows the county commissioners to kind of double that exemption and the 2.5% occupied rollback tax. And so that could reduce some of our property tax collections from our current levies. This was last night. There were 7 of them, so there's actually quite a big group. And I made those sashes, and I was not happy about it. State funding, or what is called unrestricted grants and aid, second largest, it represents a little over 24%. So the current state budget continued the phase-in of the Fair School Funding Plan for 26 and 27. Same kind of formula, base cost, that factors in the 4 components. Still using statewide averages from fiscal 22. There were no updates to those inputs. And that is held constant throughout the forecast. We did not change that because I don't expect that to change. So this year, the base cost is a little over 31 million, with the state giving us 6.7 million of that, or about $1,800 per pupil. So that's not awesome. So this year's reflects 83.33% of the phase-in, with the full 100% funding scheduled for next fiscal year. However, they did not increase those base cost inputs while allowing the local capacity side of this to grow. As a result, districts have appear to have greater local ability to fund their schools, thus reducing the amount of state aid they receive.
Which doesn't make sense because they're saying your tax base is growing, but they're passing all these laws that say that as your tax base grows, your levies can't grow with them.
Right.
But we're deciding that we're gonna cut your state funding based on the facts that your tax base is growing, but what you collect doesn't grow based on that growth.
But you have the ability, you have the ability to ask those taxpayers
to pass
for more.
a new levy,
Yes.
but they're passing all these laws because we need property tax reform because people are too far taxed.
Yes.
But their answer is to tax them more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. I mean, yes, that's exactly. So this version of the budget removed the supplemental targeted assistance, which we did not receive anyway. Guarantee, but it retained the 2 main guarantees, which is the basic formula transition aid and then the transition supplement. So you will receive no less funding in these 2 years than it did in 21. We will be a guarantee district at this rate till the end of time. And at least through this forecast. They increased transportation funding over the next 2 years, and they added 3 supplemental payments outside of the funding formula. So a base funding supplement of $27 per pupil this year and $40 next year. An enrollment growth supplement, which we will not receive that one, obviously. And then a performance supplement, of $13 per pupil in both 26 and 27, which is determined by your state report card results, with your eligibility to be confirmed later this year. Right now, we expect to receive that this year. I have not forecasted it in the future because, as we just read with certain things, you just really never know, from year to year how things are going to go, and if there's a data thing or anything like that. So I kept our report card basically staying the same, which means that you have to have some improvements in order to get this each year. It has to be better than the year before. So there is a potential there, but I did not assume that because, well, the state is involved, so I just didn't. So we obviously have risk in 28 and beyond. If the state economy weakens, they may not, Lord knows what they're gonna do with this in the next biennium budget, even if the state economy does not weaken. So there are 2 in there, so we've kind of held it stagnant at what we have now, hopefully. Even though I don't feel great about that some days, that they won't take more away. But we will adjust as things come out, as necessary. This next part, I'm not really gonna go through the next 2 slides, but this is just kind of the overview of what this looks like for us, how they calculated the base cost this year, which we've gone over before, and the capacity per pupil, and kind of how they look at that. But I will point out, if you look at that, can you go back one? At the bottom there, and you see the state share per pupil, it's at 1801 this year. It goes down in 29 and 30 to $824, which is the state minimum. That's the 10%. So $824 per student is what they will be funding us, and we will be responsible for the other portion of what that, per pupil base cost is, which is ridiculous, but. And this was another interesting thing that I received at a conference I went to earlier this year, and this was presented actually by DEW. So the top kind of shows the different types of your traditional schools, your community schools, and all of that. So basically all your publics, and then your scholarship amounts. So if you can see there, I think it says 2.3. So public total change from 25 to 26, 2.3% for the public entities in there, and then from 26 to 27, 2.1%. However, the scholarship, which is the Ed Choice and the other few scholarships that they offer to private, increased 9.2% and 7.6% respectively, compared to what it increased for public. And then this is actual enrollment numbers at the bottom. So you can see that from 23 to 24, there was an 84.4% increase in total enrollment, and even from 24 to 25, there was another 10% in the scholarship programs. And you can see, obviously, where the majority of that is coming from, and is in the Ed Choice expansion, where it went from 22,000 to almost 87,000, and then last year it was almost at 100,000. And that is where our money is going this way. So restricted grants and aid is the flip side of this. There's not a lot of change here. It continued all the same categories, the DPIA, student wellness, etc. So after calculating that base cost I mentioned before, they determine a state share percentage. You can see based on what we have to provide versus what the state is, and that 824, it kept going down. That means that our state share percentage here, as far as restricted funding, that they're going to apply is also going down. So what you're going to see is not necessarily a change in state funding overall, but where it is. It's going to change from restricted and kind of move to unrestricted because we're on the guarantee. But the percentage, the state share percentage is going down, so restricted is going to go down. That should say in 2026 at the end. It must have got cut off. Or in 2025. Threshold cost is posted as restricted revenue as well. We received a little over 400,000. I actually decreased that a little this year from what I have just been hearing that, and it decreased a little from the previous year, from 24 to 25. So I took it down to like 375, I think, for forecast purposes, because that is what they have been telling us, is that that's going to be going down, because while that pot is bigger, more people are applying and more people are hitting that threshold, and so to divvy it up between everybody is going to be a little bit less. This next slide kind of just goes over the actual calculation. So that first part is, you can see there's where that 824 in the state share per pupil. So you can see by the end on line C there, our state share of base cost amount, based on just the formula, the calculated formula, $3 million is what the state will provide to us for our students. So total funding there, you can see it goes from 8.5 in 26 down to 3.8 in 2030. However, because of the guarantees, we get no less than we had in 21. So if we look at the next slide, you can kind of see, how that works out. And so if you look at where it says FY20 guarantee line, I'm sorry, down here, the FY20 plus the 21 base guarantee totals, that's the amount of the guarantee that they're like making up the gap from what was calculated to versus what our guaranteed amount is. So this year it's about $4.5 million, and it's going to grow to like over 10 million that they have to kind of supplement because of that guarantee being in place as the state. And then this is just kind of an overview of between the restricted funding summary, what the additional unrestricted state funding looks like, and then total calculated. So total state funding between the two categories is about $16.7 million. All other operating revenues. So not a lot of changes here either. So obviously with our cash balances going down and the feds starting to cut some things and anticipated Federal Reserve cuts, obviously our interest is down significantly from what it was before. We had projected that in May. I cut it down even a little bit more just to be safe because of what we've received so far this year, although we did have a better month in September, which I was happy to see. The Medicaid school program, we started receiving those payments last year. Those will continue, and we'll see a little bit of a jump next year when they do what is basically the true up. So we get like interim claims right now, and then they do a full true up, which is like, they give us like the other half basically at that point. So there'll be a large payment to make up that year. However, that is about 6.11% of revenues. And then we have the total other financing sources. Not a lot much here. One big thing though, other than our advances are in here, our 6-district compact that we bill for are here. In May, we had about a 3.5 increase projected due to the sale of Roberts and the high school. Due to some different developments and being unsure of that right now, that has been decreased to only a 1.5 million in 27, and now also includes the Schnee Learning Center now that those decisions have been made. So to coincide with those buildings becoming vacant, so that's going to be another one that's subject to. I was trying to be conservative based on what we know now. Hopefully that is not the case going forward, but on the chance that it is, this is what it looks like. There's us. That's all of us. And that was all her fan club. I think if you hit the next button, see that? There's Lisa Grimm. I think you hit one more. I put her name there for, yes, Lisa. There's Lisa. So, that was her fan club. Expenditures, also not a lot of shocks here on this cover page. Salaries and benefits is about 80%. Expenditures are decreasing by an average of 0.86 annually. And really the reason for that is, we obviously have had to make some big reductions, not only with the closing of an elementary school, but the reductions we made just going into this year because of the recovery plan, in addition to some major projects being completed in capital outlay, and just by basis of me going through this forecast and realizing there are some things that we thought we were going to be able to do that we're not going to be able to do in the time frames that we wanted. So that's it's a little misleading, but it's not totally misleading. That's not something that's going to stay that way, I guess you could say. It really just is due to the major cuts that are coming over the course of the forecast, especially in salaries and benefits. Because historically, they increased about 5.11%. So the first category then is our personnel services, which is about 53% of the district's operating. You can go to the next one. So this is the final year of our negotiated agreements, which had a base wage of 2% increases in 24 and 3% in 25 and 26. One of the changes that I made for this, because we wouldn't be able to certify, was we previously had fiscal 27 at a 1% projected and 28, 29 at 2. I've brought 28 down to 1% because we wouldn't be able to afford that. I wouldn't be able to certify that, so it's not something that we can do. I could have left it in there. We would have been in the red. We would have had another financial recovery plan, and I would have done this anyway. So in order to not necessarily avoid the financial recovery plan, but avoid it, we kind of made some decisions that we would have to make through that anyway, officially, and not have to go through maybe all the tedious steps in the process of it. We just proactively made those decisions and those reductions in order to balance the budgets. It does assume step increases, for all those years, and 2% is for the last 2 years of the forecast as well. So as part of the financial recovery plan and some other changes that were made, we are expected to save a little over 1.9 million beginning this year. So even with that, this is, that bottom line is where it's at. But we saved about 1.9 million in just changes and reductions and not replacing things and things like that. In addition, due to the decision to close Preston and relocate Schnee Learning Center in the district preschool, we're estimating $850,000 starting next year from that because we're reducing those elementaries. However, in this year, there's also an addition because of bringing the preschool program back in-house of about $600,000 in salaries because it is no longer a purchase service. We are paying those individuals directly. And then the next one is just the graph of that. Employee benefits, 26.66 of operating expenditures. As these next ones all kind of correlate with what I just said, so benefits, because of reductions this year, expected to save about $800,000. Starting next year, because of the closing, we're projecting about $650,000. And then we have added about $175,000 because of the preschool coming back in-house. And I won't belabor this one either because you guys have seen all this. We had an 18.14% increase in 25. This year we did a 21.5% increase to medical and 5% to dental. We have had a number of very high cases and individuals on the insurance that have, reached upwards of $200,000+ in claims. A number of those people have retired. Unfortunately, we've also had some people pass away over the last couple years. So there are a good number of those that are coming kind of off of our insurance right now. But because we're not really sure, the timing of those can sometimes lag a lot, and you never know what else is going to happen or in place. It's like this for everybody, as I always say. So we projected that 8% because we really don't expect there to be more than this 2-year huge anomaly for us that we've kind of right-sized it going forward, and hopefully we won't have to have those large increases in those years, but we've still projected 8%, which is what we had projected in the past and never really hit until the last 2, but we've had 2 significant increases. So we're hopeful that our claims start to come down. Purchase services, again, this is about 12.11% of our total expenditures. Not much has really changed here. The biggest one you'll see is that the preschool program. So the preschool program was outsourced and managed by some ESC, which we paid through this category to the tune of about $1.2 million, $1.3 million a year. So we paid them in 2 installments, one in August and one in January. For the previous school year, so we had a mid-year and then a true-up. So this year you see a reduction of about $600,000+, and then you'll see another reduction next year to get to that full $1.2, $1.3 million reduction in this category, and has shifted some of it to salaries and benefits. And in addition, in alignment with our financial recovery plan, a 10% reduction was applied to all building and department budgets, and that's going to affect this category, supplies, capital outlay, going forward. So, supplies and materials, the biggest one in here is textbooks. So increases are projected this year, which is that's when the payment happened. It's the tail end of the science that was on last year. And in fiscal 29 and 30, obviously there's some textbook adoptions that we had slated earlier in the cycle, but as part of the recovery plan and as part of looking at this forecast, as I was doing it, we had to push those further out in order to stay solvent. And like I said, this is a smaller amount, but it's 2.63% of our total expenditures. capital outlay. This one may take a little bit of a different turn. It's a small amount, 3.88%, although it has been much larger in other years depending on what kind of projects we've been doing. You can go to the next slide. As I say in here, it continues to be influenced by the $3.7 million emergency levy and the lack of our permanent improvement fund, which it has. A lot of our expenses in this category come out of emergency levy, which we're not going to be able to renew in the future. So we are going to have to look at that. But you can see those notable increases in the past are due to the air conditioning of the buildings. We do still have right now emergency levy funded expenditures, again, because I wasn't going to change everything last minute, in the forecast. So what you see there, which is any combination of buses, roofs, parking lot repairs or maintenance, and all of that. Future years have some decreases because as we move to the 612 building, we do have a PI fund of $500,000 that we were required to take care of any kind of repairs or maintenance for that, and that's outside of the general fund. So that is a little bit helpful there. As I said, some of these also had to be pushed out more of what we had in the emergency levy plan. We had to push them out further just because of budget constraints, and we weren't going to be able to do it. I think if you remember, we went from like 2 buses every year to 1, and those kinds of things. So the big change here is that, and I'll kind of explain this. This is the easiest way to do it, was that previously we had this fiscal year as starting to pay this out of the general fund, and I shifted it to 27, and I did that, as I mentioned in my email, because it is an option and it's the easiest option to reflect in the forecast without messing with a lot of things. But there are a couple other options we can do, because obviously we wouldn't have been solvent at the end of this year if we had to pay that $1.2 million. However, we do have some excess, and we definitely know we have a number of millions of dollars of interest in our LFI funds that is going to be completely ours. So there is potential to use that to pay some of this. The other more logical one is that using some of our LFI funds, after speaking with the attorney, to potentially pay for like the HVAC project, so the Preston and Price right now. That may be the easiest logistically, but not necessarily for me in the forecast right there. So it really would be about the same tune, the same amount of what it is. So right now it's easier to do that. We're kind of gonna touch base as we go through the year, because we have a payment in December and we have a payment in June, and we can recode those things as time comes if potential, we need to back it out of the general fund or things like that. Right now we're assuming it's not going to be in there, but if by chance some of these other numbers start looking different or revenues start looking different for whatever reason, and we can pay some or all, then that's what we'll do. But those are kind of going to be more game time decisions. Probably have a better idea at the February one, but I probably really won't have a strong idea until closer towards the end of the year. But legally, and as far as like paperwork wise, it's probably going to be easier for us to change out some of that HVAC project, just without having to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of different red tape stuff. But I didn't want to skew what was in there already for the capital outlay if that's not what we decide to do, because we won't if we don't have to.
How much interest are we looking at?
In LFI right now? So we have about $3.5 million there. And in addition, we will have excess LFI, but we won't know what that is until the project closes out for 100%, which includes the BOLIC demo as well. So it will probably be sometime next fiscal year when we'll have that exact amount. That's the other thing. Some of that could be used in the future for some of these things that we have projected, because the way we passed that money, it was kind of to be used for any building improvement project when we did that levy for those funds, and then the interest that has obviously accompanied them. we left it pretty broad. And so in that case, it doesn't have to just be for the 612, it could basically be for any district-wide, large improvement. Basically, anything that would be permanent improvement related, that you could pay out of a permanent improvement fund. So
I guess the boiler that we need at an elementary school.
it potentially could. It's gonna depend on, again, when we close out, because there may be a little bit more in the non-interest, just because some of the stadium stuff came in lower. But, we've also had some overages on the co-funded side that we will have to eventually start with LFI, potentially, depending on the amount of interest that they're going to totally allow. It's a little bit of a flux right now. As you guys know, Dennis had always said to use the interest, and I do have that in writing. But we do have a different project manager, and so sometimes they have different thoughts, and then none of them have the same thoughts as the people that actually close out the project, like in Oaks and how it's recorded. So between myself and Angie at Hammond, we're kind of trying to navigate that and talk with Timothy, who's our new project manager there, and lead from OFCC to kind of navigate that. So I really didn't want to assume a whole lot other than I know we have interest in LFI, and I know that's all ours at the end of the day because they're LFI funds. And so
We've
there's.
got that $1 million payment we're holding back too. There's an interesting article on the Cleveland.com today about a design failure from the same firm on another project in Cuyahoga County. I sent that to Dr. Salico to just keep in that file that we have.
Yes. So there's a potential for stuff there, but it's really, until we close it out and we get like the final okay from OFCC, like, yes, this is allowed, yes, this is yours, yes, this is what we, it's hard to say, and we didn't really include it in that, other than I knew we could cover this payment and or some other version from those funds if needed. And then the last one is our other objects, which mostly are the Summit County Fiscal Auditor fees for tax collection. It's a little under 1% of total expenditures. And then the total other financing uses are just the opposite. Those are our advances out, which come back in the next fiscal year, and then our Board of Revision appeals. Next one, so this is the 5-year average annual change. So there's historical on the right. Black is inflation. Revenue is in blue, and then in yellow are our expenditures. Again, like I said, it's a little bit of an anomaly out there because we've cut a lot. We've had to cut a lot. But you can see that the inflation is expected to go down a little, but our expenditures are just slightly outpacing that inflation rate historically. This is not a fun section anymore. It used to be. So revenues over expenditures, you don't want this number to be negative. Unfortunately, it's gonna be. So looking at the next slide, in May, you're looking at, and you're gonna have to look because now that we've shifted the year, so we've got 22 through 29 for May, and then for October through, I think if you hit one more time, one more, yep. And then 23 to 30 for October because we've shifted that. But you can see in the October forecast, we ended last year, which we knew to be about 10 million expenditures over revenues. Now, a lot of that was the HVAC project, and same thing in 24, where we kind of had that money from emergency levy. We sat on it. As you can see, we had $3 million over in 23, a little under $1 million in 22, but we did end up there. And then you can see going forward, in the only positive year there is 27, and that's due to that one-time increase of the sale of the buildings. And then it continues in the red through 33, although it's not terribly. It's a little better than it was in those later years, due to the number of cuts and the reduction in the salary percentage and things. But there's also a lot of factors that influence those last years that we're unsure of right now. So fund balance. So the have not updated yet for 2025, but if you recall, in 2024, average Summit County District had 32.94%. We were the 6th lowest with a 23.9% carryover. If you look at the graph here, you can see where we were at. Obviously, 2030 was not part of the forecast, but we had anticipated having a little bit more at the end of this year. But our real estate, I don't know that I mentioned this there, but our real estate delinquencies are up a little bit. So what we had projected in May for real estate tax collections is down a little based on this first payment. Now, we will have more, we still have a second half that comes later in the year, and so that may change things, but based on what we've received right now, the delinquency rate is up a little bit, and so that was probably to the tune of about $500,000.
Foreclosure filings are up too.
Yeah, and so that's really a majority of the reason for the decrease. It's not necessarily expenditures that went up. Some of our revenue is down from last year. And then going forward, and you can see the differences between them are obviously all to the negative. 27, the big one, is because of the decrease in the potential sale revenue. So then our cash carryover position, this is where we're at. Standard-wise, we finished last year with 7.75% cash carryover. We're going to be under 1% this year, under 0.5% in 28, and a little above 2, and then we start to go into the negative. And you can see how that translates here. So at the end of 25, we had 28 days, about a month of cash on hand. This year we'll have 3 days, to 8, to 2, and then into the negative. So these are 2 videos that I want to show you, much like this forecast that, maybe 2 years ago was awesome and looked great, and that will coincide with the video on the left, and then, you're having a great day, and then the video on the right happened. So the video on the left was Wednesday. I think you should be able to play it.
Is it football or?
It let me play it on mine. Oh, because you have it in Google. I wonder if that's why. They're both very quick, but it was very fitting to how things have gone.
Are there any other questions or comments
Yes.
from the board?
I've been stressed. I'll just say that.
I'll call the roll while this is working. Mr. Harris? Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White? Mr. Gomez, aye.
So this is Wednesday night at Powder Puff, which the seniors won, by the way. One day, as you watch, you're running back 100-yard pick six for a touchdown. That's my kid. Great, you're on top of the world, right? The next day, you're at a volleyball game. She's the server, so watch her. You're getting shot in the face by a volleyball. It's called balance. So that's how life balances you out. Those were within 24 hours. That was fitting. Yes. So some days the forecast, some years the forecast gives you good stuff. Sometimes it doesn't. Huh? No, she's fine. I laughed. I was the only one, but I was allowed to. Said, you're fine. She got up. She was fine. She had some,
Yeah, I bet.
watering, but
Jeez.
she stayed in. She was good.
She stayed.
Oh, man. Do you have any other comments tonight, Ms. Stoikoi?
I don't. Except
Will you have the purpose and goal statements, will those be uploaded for the next meeting?
correct. Yep.
By this week?
Yes,
maybe?
yeah.
Okay, because we'll be voting on those at the next meeting, and it's a lot, and Mr. Jones will not print those for you. too much paper.
It is a lot.
He didn't print them last year, Ms. White.
Okay.
He's not gonna
Don't have to
print
worry.
them. So, that way you can start reviewing them,
I
because it's a
know,
lot to
that's all
review.
right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and so I'm not running out, but I've been dealing with a migraine, so I will be leaving after this. So thank you for allowing that.
Item G, Superintendent CEO's business, consent agenda, Dr. Selko.
Thank you. Just recommend that the Board of Education approves all items listed in the superintendent's consent.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes. This evening we have, alright, so we have, some various things under personnel relative to, some mileage reimbursements. We have student workers, some miscellaneous classified appointments, and a couple, miscellaneous extra duties there for your consideration. And then we have, 6 retirements. We have Kevin Dean, who is the custodian at the high school, and he's been here for a number of years. We have our
He
very
was
own.
hired as a high school student
Julie.
Oh, wow.
and worked his entire career here with our district. So.
Wow, I know he's been here a long time, I didn't know that
Mhm.
he sent him back to high school. Julie Dudones, who is here with us this evening, who, is our coordinator of curriculum, at central office, and
Oh,
sent
man.
her letter in with lots of different experiences here, and even student teaching?
Yeah.
Is that what I read here? Yeah, so you too have gone back quite a number of years.
She had 32.
Lisa Lombacher is ELA teacher at the Cuyahoga Falls Middle School. Brianna Malone, paraprofessional at Price. Heather Schloss
I
as
know, that's
ELA
my-
teacher.
She was my partner in our teams at
Yeah,
bowling.
that's right.
Heather. I know.
Yeah. All right, and Lisa Wilson, third
Can't
grade
believe
teacher at Preston.
She's
So,
old enough to retire.
yeah.
I know, I can't. It's
So
hard to
it's,
believe.
we're seeing a lot of this, as you all know, that, the STRS has changed it to the 32 years for qualifying.
Yeah.
So, as a result, people are opting into going a little bit
Yeah.
earlier than maybe what they originally thought. So thank you to all of those folks, and Julie was here, so thank you for all of your service, and appreciative of all of them. We also have, a contract for, it's what Mrs. Hausman mentioned earlier, for Dr. Wilfong, and this is the professional development for our teachers, and we will be using title funds for that. We have the contract for the BOLIC only middle school auction, so they will be coming in and have been coming in and looking at our things, and I think January will be our auction. And then we'll follow it up quickly with Roberts and the high school. We also have 2 out-of-district placements there for your consideration for students at those facilities. And I think that's it.
Questions or comments from the board?
No, it's just, I will certainly miss Julie and Heather both. Julie helped me get my national board. She was a big influence for me to do that, and helped me. And Heather was, like I said, my partner for 2 years at BOLIC, so I know. You guys aren't old enough. I don't know how you can be old enough. Oh, well.
I have a question on the auction for BOLIC. Will we be doing something to make our community aware that we're auctioning stuff off if there's something that they want to bid on? I know it's through the government sites and all that, but just something to let folks know, like this auction is live, it's the BOLIC stuff. If you want
Yeah,
to
I know
bid on
it's-
something.
But I don't know, I don't know enough about the company itself. I know they're doing it online and.
Yes, but we can do it through our website, let people know that we're gonna be auctioning off items and give them an opportunity to go look at them and stuff like that, so.
Just equal opportunity,
Yes.
nothing
Yeah, I don't see
special,
why
but just to
we-
make folks aware.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they really want one of those little chairs,
Yeah.
this is how you get it.
We have some nice study carrels here this evening.
Yeah. Thank you. Call the roll. Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez? Aye. Mr. Harris? Aye. Thank you. Brings us to item H, Superintendent CEO's business. Dr. Salko, your comments.
Thank you. Not too many this evening. We had our opening game last week. It was pretty amazing. We did a debrief yesterday morning while everything was fresh in our heads, and just adjustments that we would like to make. nothing too major, but, we will tweak a few things, but just so many compliments we received, that night, even from opposing teams. I was in Columbus the last 2 days seeing colleagues, and even colleagues from other districts were sharing with us that either their children had attended the game or from other districts or whatever, and just said how impressive, the stadium was, so. Very excited and thankful to my team for all the hard work that they did to plan. A lot of hours went into that.
Do we adjust the band drop off? Cause that was a little bit of.
Band, we talked about where the
Okay.
buses will go, yes,
Yeah.
for sure, we're modifying that.
'Cause that was a little bit of
Yeah.
an issue, having them come in the same place people were coming into park created. an
It was
issue. Mr.
actually.
Schaefer and I were right there, and we can
Yeah.
attest that it created quite
Yeah, no, I was
issue
there,
also.
and it, that was really the only glitch of the,
Yeah.
like, that morning. Well, one thing is that more people need to access Portage Trail. A lot of them were coming off of 13th Street. Portage Trail was definitely, I think we're putting that in our,
It
in
went
our-
out.
yeah, it did go out.
An
okay.
hour and 40 minutes.
Okay, so we'll put out to access that, more people use that, entrance, but we didn't, apparently there were supposed to be a few spots where people were not allowed to park, but they parked there, so the buses couldn't get through, and that was the holdup, so then we just pushed the buses through to get the cars in, so
Yeah.
that will be fixed.
Okay.
We had the State of the Schools address, appreciate, those who were able to attend, and that will be eventually aired with Lucas out and doing our, editing, that'll be a little while. We had our, safety assemblies, those went really well. Again, we were complimented by FBI agents, Durker, who said that we're just one of, I think, the only one in the county who really takes such a strong stance with talking about, behavior and consequences of our actions relative to, we covered drugs, violence, threats, and we had, an FBI agent, the magistrate, we had a prosecutor, and Officer Davis, and then Mr. Gesford and myself, we all spoke to our students in grades 6 through 12 and went to every school and held assemblies. So the students were responsive, to that and well behaved, so hopefully we'll see some improvements in our behavior. But, again, it was to educate, not threaten or scare, but just to really educate our students on making good choices. And then lastly, I would just mention that I, was at, as I mentioned in Columbus, I do the annual, VASA conference get to be with, all of our colleagues. Lieutenant, Governor Jim Tressel was one of our opening speakers. So we got to hear from him this morning, and, went to a few sessions. One was kind of refreshing about creating a positive culture. You know, you have to blend in something a little more positive among all the other choices of legal updates and legislative news, none of which was, encouraging, very depressing, so I had to go to some sessions to mix it up a little bit. I will say, I was trying to remember some of the stats, and I believe this is correct, but this is what OSBA said, that they were making a correlation of the state and how much money how they fund our schools. So we have the 8th highest, percentage in property tax rate in all the states, 8th. But yet, okay, and then the per student expenditure, I believe we went from 35th to 45th. So the correlation is not equaling out the money that they have in the state and where they invest in education. So, there were just some startling numbers and just really hard to listen to, just, and the challenge, it's just one after another. We heard about the levies and how we'll be impacted there and how, it will greatly impact and literally devastate districts if some of these, things happen. But they are relentless in trying to, they being the legislators, you have a working group going on, from the governor task force to solve the property tax issues. You have, legislators, the House, Senate, trying to override the vetoes, and then in the same vein, you also have new bills being introduced all around the same topics, around the levies, around taking, administrators, compensation. They're just hitting us from every angle. So it was very discouraging, but it was nice to be around my colleagues and see them and hear that they're having similar challenges and successes. So we don't want to just be negative. It was nice to see them. It's a nice conference every year, so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. But we will need to do some efforts. I have some talking points to share with members of our community, with some of us if we can make some efforts with our senators, and I think we can get some support from some, not optimistic with others that represent our area, but they're putting, they've made some bold statements about their positions on this, and they don't coincide with what will be beneficial for our schools. But I will continue to try as our advocate for the district and would ask that others do the same.
Yeah, it's very important to vote for people that support public schools.
Thank you.
That brings us to item I, board business. Number 1, approval of support organization. It's recommended the Board of Education approves the following support organization: Cuyahoga Falls Athletic Booster Club.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Call the roll. Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez, aye. Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Number 2, out-of-state field trip, interactive marketing design class. It's recommended the Board of Education approves the out-of-state field trip for the interactive marketing and design class.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
The students always look forward to this trip. This one will be in Orlando. Last year they went to New York. I think they alternate. I did scrutinize the agenda and asked a number of questions that I feel comfortable with, but we will pay close attention to the educational benefits. You know, it certainly is a fun experience for the students. I love that for them, but it comes at a cost of missing some days of school, number of staff members out. There'll be 3 days out of school, 4 staff members not here, you know, and having to get substitutes for them. And then the cost, I think I feel comfortable with the students being able to fundraise all year. So that makes me happy that it'll be a reasonable, hopefully a reasonable number for our students to afford. And I love that they have the opportunity, but we'll just, you know, assess it at the end of this trip to see the educational value. But I know they're excited to go, and that makes me happy to hear.
Call the roll. Mr. Gomez, aye. Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Next is future agenda items. Do you have any additional future agenda items? In the next meeting, we have discussion of boundaries as well as our first top Tigers of the year. Will we be including top Tigers from the preschool?
That's funny, we asked that question. I think they're doing other ideas for PBIS, but if the board desires to do that, I'm not.
Well, this is the board's program.
It is, that's why I
so
said if that's the board's desire.
I think we'd like to
Yeah.
include the
It's fine.
preschoolers.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially since we're only having 2 from the middle school, it really just evens out. So
The
we'll
2?
have to hurry up, because I know they're not on the list right
2
as
weeks,
is.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna email Ms. Lemon.
I know they're not on the list right now, so they'll have to hurry up and make it happen. Okay, thank you. Number 4, committee reports.
I do, but I can't find it. Shoot.
Do you have a committee report, Mr. Harrison?
We talked a lot about,
Okay.
you know, some of the issues. I appreciate Ms. Stoico throwing into 5 reports, and I don't really have much to add.
Okay, policy meets next Wednesday. Anything else? Any other committee reports, Mr. Schaefer?
The district wellness committee met. We met in, okay. We went into subcommittees, and I was in the subcommittee with Chef Bill Bailey. We went over the school meals on our policy related to school meals. And we went over some of the things that maybe we don't do as well and things that we can maybe improve on. So when we're focusing on four key areas, staff members, especially those serving, being trained to politely prompt students to consume the daily vegetable options with their meal, offering alternative options, student surveys and taste tests. So Try It Fridays, he's already started doing that, and then student artwork. So we talked about, so this will make me think about you, Ms. White.
Oh.
So we had talked about using menu development and using the morning announcements to help promote the menu and everything. So I said maybe we could have the students write a script, and then we're using writing, and now they're reading what they've written, so that using writing.
All right.
So I think I thought of you.
You sure did. Oh, thank you.
But, one, like, very exciting thing that I found out that we're doing, that I didn't know, we have wings. They serve wings. Oh, yeah. Like
Chicken
wings.
wings?
Chicken wings.
Oh,
Okay.
So I was so very excited.
okay.
Yeah, I was so very excited. Yeah, but we did talk a little bit about they've changed, and I think we talked about this last year, they've changed some of the USDA has changed the parameters for school lunches and school breakfast. They've lowered the sugar content,
And the salt.
and the salt, and so the industry hasn't really caught up to those parameters yet, so there's some hiccups trying to get us there, so he's working hard to make sure that we're meeting our guidelines. I believe in him, so.
And they
Very
just, they made a
exciting.
lot of changes all at once at the federal level too, didn't they, with the food, coming out of the health department? Dyes and stuff like that, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
so-
yet, but yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Those would be good things,
Those
though.
will be in like 5
Yeah.
years.
Less processed food.
Yep,
Yeah.
it is, that'll be good.
They can do that incrementally. Other things have to happen right now.
And Ms. White?
I do, I'm sorry about
Oh, I was
that.
buying you time.
I know,
You
you did. Well, with the core team met, and everything is really going well, which it should be, because it's only, really what, 2 months, not even 2
They got
months.
about a month to go.
Yeah, so, but just to mention a couple of things, the auditorium carpet and lobby stairs, they're doing those. They're working on mostly punch lists. I'm sure you guys know that's just a checklist that they go through, and then anything they find. So most of it's pretty much done. There are a couple things they're still working on, but the one great thing that I noticed was inspections passed. So that is always good news. The building 4 fire alarm install and testing, that passed. The commissioning sound system throughout, the working on the bell schedule. Another fire alarm inspection was complete. Kitchen health department complete. Elevators complete. Final electric inspection complete. Area of refuge inspection complete. Final line safety inspection complete. So, I mean, there's just one more before certificate of, the final life safety inspection is the last one before we can officially get the certificate of occupancy. So, I mean, it's just awesome to see after so long and so many years that, soon, it's soon. And of course, we talked about the ribbon ceremony, which will be December 6th, 11 o'clock. We're not sure if it'll be indoors or out, and so we're looking into that. Yeah, so, and then I don't know if we're doing the December 5th for
Yeah,
the.
we're gonna talk
Oh,
about
okay,
that in the
all right.
committee.
Okay, so, any rate, so that was all good, all, great news. It's all on time and will be done soon, so, yeah, one more inspection to go.
And then there's 2 more subcommittees related to moving the buildings. One
Yeah,
is
that's true.
related to all the historical artifacts,
Yes.
and Mrs. Schaefer is representing the board on that committee.
Okay.
And then one is for planning, the ribbon cutting, and then I'll be representing the board on that.
Okay,
So
good.
if there's anything that needs reported out, we'll report out during committee reports.
So, yeah, we're just about there.
Getting there.
I know, it's exciting.
Okay, brings us to number 5, comments. Mrs. Schaefer.
Well, my first thing I'd like to say is I got to go to the Friday night football game, very exciting. Stadium looked great. I got to go up to the press box and look down. I didn't bother what was going on, but I did peek through the window. It looks gigantic from up there. I mean, it is gigantic, so, but it was very exciting. I don't wanna spoil anything, but when we did score and then the light, there was like light fireworks, like with the lights, it was like fireworks. It was
Saw
so,
the videos, really cool.
it was very exciting, very exciting. I didn't know it was gonna happen. I forgot that we were even gonna have that kind of capability, so it was very exciting. I don't know if I mentioned this, very exciting. I don't even remember what else I did this week, so.
Ms. White?
Yes, I'd like to congratulate my two colleagues. So proud of both of you for completing those. Well, you completed, you still have one to go? Two steps to go. So, but we're very proud of you, so you know. And then the Fresh Farm, I read their newsletter and I attended that garden thing party, and I just wanted to tell the community, food donations they made was over 2,238 pounds food donated. They also donate compost, 419 pounds. So an awesome job to those kids, and of course the two advisors that are well, instigated the program. I don't know if that's the right word, instigated. They probably like that word. Stephen Steele would like that word, but yeah. But at any rate, I just thought that was amazing, how much food they've donated. And I do have an article. I'm gonna make it fast. 5 simple ways to say you belong. And that we are big in this school system for belonging and having our kids feel like they belong. There's just, some things that we can all do. I'm sure some things that people are already doing. First of all, belonging is the feeling that we're part of a larger group. That's basically how we define belonging. It's a larger group that values, respects, and cares for us, and to which we feel we have something to contribute. So when they have a strong sense of belonging, we know they perform better academically. And that is what is so very, very important to me as well. Students also feel a sense of belonging. They experience measurable health benefits. They have seen reported wellness and fewer doctor visits. Belonging, therefore, is not a peripheral concern. It's fundamental to learning, and I believe that is true. There are 5 actions they recommend that teachers can take to build a student's sense of belonging. The first one, and I think a lot of our teachers do this already, stand out of your door and greet the students when they enter your classroom. I tried to do that. I didn't always get to because you get busy. And so, but it is a nice thing, especially to say their name. Hi Jen, hi James, it's just nice. And it always make eye contact and smile. And I always, every time they'd come in, I would smile, and they know that. And also friendly nonverbal greetings such as a handshake, high five, fist bump, wave, or thumbs up. I had one student, we had a special handshake, just he and I, it was great. Give a few words of encouragement, glad you're here, or let's make it count today. So that is one way, just to greet them and have that smile and make that contact. Another way is to create meaningful classroom responsibilities. To me, this sounds more elementary. I didn't really do that too much. I didn't have many rules except that, just be responsible. And, high school's a little different animal, but, things that, you can give them a responsibility to collect the pencils or put things away and so on. It makes them feel like they're important and they have a job. Another one is use universal response opportunities. This includes feeling valued and contributing to the group. Teachers can call on students at random, but also if you can go back to a student that didn't know an answer and then ask them after somebody gives the correct answer, what's the answer now? And hopefully they have learned that answer and they'll repeat it. And there's all kinds of ways you can do that. They'll balance ways in which they ask students to respond. It could be writing, it could be exit slips, all kinds of things that teachers can do. Also, another one is boost productive group work. You can do think, pair, share. You can do numbered heads, which I've done all of it. It sounds so old, but I guess it's still going on now. And numbered off, and where they put their heads together and so on. I loved my literary circles and my writing groups. I just loved how those kids worked together so well. Finally, harness the power of past success. Students can engage in academic risk-taking. That's a good thing. Even if they fail, they want to learn, and to make them succeed, you go back and you maybe help them to take a risk, and that's goal reachable. But you also want to plan for them to experience success more frequently than failures, and that's so important. and reminding students of their earlier success has a positive impact on their persistence and performance. And that is so very true, I think. So just some ways, you know, these are no cost interventions that, you know, I'm sure a lot of our teachers do and use, but I found that article just wonderful because, you know, again, I liked that contact. I remember when I made my, and I don't know if you do this with elementary, but with my high school kids, they'd come in the first day and I'd let them sit wherever they wanted. And I'd go around and shake their hand and welcome them and say, what do you want to be called? Now that could be dangerous because I had one kid will call me Morgan. I said, no, I'm not calling you that, but we'll go from there. Yeah, you get, but they were usually pretty good. And then I told them, you know, as I went around and got their names and welcomed them to my class that I did reserve the idea of changing their seats if they didn't behave. But it just worked. It was just nice to do little things just like that to help them feel that sense of belonging. And I think our teachers do a lot of those things. But I just thought the public should know some of those things that I think, again, a lot of our teachers and staff do already. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm up next. I did attend this Day of the Schools along with several of my colleagues, and then I attended our first football game in the new stadium. It's a beautiful stadium. It was extremely well attended by our community, and it's just wonderful to get to open up a little piece of that new campus to our community and celebrate with them. Mr. Harris?
I was also at the State of the City. Fantastic job, Dr. Selico. Soul Schools, sorry. Fantastic job, Mayor Walters as well. I was at that one. Congratulations to Mr. Gomez and Ms. Schaefer again, and as well as Preston Elementary for the Purple Star Award. I also made it to the football game. I told Ms. Coco as we were standing there, you know, it's just so exciting. Everyone was so pumped. The vibe in there was just amazing. But 3 years ago, we were just breaking ground, you know, right, just right there, and it was just it was a great feeling, just surreal. So glad we get to share that with the community. And then I also attended a city council meeting as they voted or passed the levy out of their committee for a vote next week. I want to thank Councilperson Nichols Rhodes for her comments about the work the district's been doing, as well as Councilperson Loza as well. So.
Thank you. Item J is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:02.